Relationship between squares and square roots. Squaring a number and taking a square root are inverse operations. Let's look at it this way. If we take 3 and we square it, 3 times 3 gives you 9. So 3 is the square root of 9. So, if I take the number 3 and I square it, let's take 3 and square it. Well, 3 squared is 3 times 3 equals to 9. So if I take 3 and square it, I get 9. But then if I take 9 and I take the square root of 9, I go back and get 3. So if I take the square root of 9, I go back and get 3. So squaring something and taking the square root of something, they just undo each other. They're called inverse operations. Let's talk about the number of solutions. What does x squared equal to p mean? To solve the equation x squared equals to 4, this is what you need to think. What number multiplied times itself gives you 4? Think about it. What number can you plug into that equation and square it so that you get 4? Well, if we take 2 and square it, 2 times 2 gives you 4. And also, if you take negative 2 and square it, negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 4. Therefore, there's 2 numbers that I could substitute in for x, square them, and get 4. So, our final answer for a problem of x squared equals to 4 would be x equals to 2 and x equals to negative 2. Or x equals 2 plus or minus 2. Often you see this. A plus on top and a minus on bottom. This just represents positive 2 and negative 2. So let's look at a few problems. Well, let's take into consideration the equation of x squared equals to p for the value of p that's greater than 0. To go from x squared to x, you think about taking the square root of p. Because we know if you take the square root of p and square it, that's square root of p times square root of p equals to p. Squaring a square root, they just undo each other. Same would be for negative square root of p. If you square it, that's negative square root of p times negative square root of p. Well, negative times a negative gives you a positive. And square root of p times square root of p, that's like squaring a square root, also gives you p. Therefore, x is equal to the square root of p, and x is equal to negative square root of p. Or x is equal to plus or minus the square root of p. So, when you have x squared equals to p, to solve for x, you will take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared gives you x is equal to plus or minus the square root of p. So to solve an equation in the form of x squared equals to p, it's like you will take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared gives me x is equal to plus or minus the square root of p. So, in general, an equation of the form x squared equals to p, when p is greater than 0, will always have 2 solutions, one positive and one negative. X is equal to plus or minus the square root of p.